Okay, so I'm in my backyard and we're gonna have to deal with a lot more noises and neighbors' dogs. But that's just part of it. If you went to the woods, you'd have to deal with the birds, the other noises out there. So we'll just do neighborhood noises. There's the dogs. I guess I'm gonna have to speak up. A few things I wanted to address, then ask some questions. See if they start barking again when I start talking. So get this adjusted. It's my fancy equipment here. Anyway, the first thing I want to address is someone mentioned that there has been a study come out, another DNA set of tests that showed that, and I may have this wrong, that Sasquatch was more related to a monkey. What do I think of that? Well, I don't trust mainstream science, period. I don't trust these people that do these shows. Don't trust the scientists they use, and basically I don't trust anything they do. J.C. Johnson, the late J.C. Johnson, a friend of mine, participated in a DNA study that had Meldrum and Dr. Sykes in it, and they were given preliminary results that backed up Dr. Ketchum's Sasquatch genome study results. I have to go in. This thing. Okay, I'm back. So I attempted to do this outside, but that ain't happening. Neighbors, dogs, and mowers and everything else. It was quiet as all that could be until I decided I was going to try to go outside and record this video. So it's springtime and I got windows open and I'm trying to enjoy, I am enjoying the warm weather and everything blooming. Dogwoods are in bloom right now here in East Tennessee. It's really nice. So back to what I was talking about. The question I was asked was, what do you think of these new results? Well, really what I think doesn't matter. I'm not a scientist and I'm not in that world, but I do trust Dr. Ketchum. I trust David Pilates. I trust the scientists she worked with. And I know how that study was done. And I'll put a little picture of my book. I wrote the book that contained, actually I wrote two books, The Nephilim Among Us and then The Truth Denied. And in both books I have a section on the study. But I go into, with Truth Denied, I go into the whole shoot match garbage that was what happened around the Sasquatch DNA study from my perspective. It's not from anybody else's perspective, my perspective. And as a contributor, someone, and then someone who also was friends with Dave and became friends with Melba and other people involved in the study. So I trust that study. I trust Dave, Melba with my life. And I know it was done correctly. I know it was done by the numbers. And I know the results are rock solid. I don't trust any other results. We've had multiple labs ask for samples, and Dr. Ketchum gives them the samples, and then when their results confirm the study that Sasquatch is a human hybrid, the labs clam up, they shut down the study, they give a courtesy call or email to Dr. Ketchum telling him, off the record, yes, we confirmed your results on the record. We will not be mentioned, and some of these labs were threatened, or not labs, but some of these lab workers were threatened with their jobs if, anything got out or anybody spoke about this. So that's happened numerous times, and I was alluding to earlier my friend J.C. Johnson, who, the late J.C. Johnson, he passed away here a few years ago. He was involved in getting old. So old I can't remember everything, so I have to go get my own book to refer to it. Oh, by the way, there's another fellow that I trust with my life that's a real good friend that endorsed this book. As a shameless plug, I might show the picture of him holding it. Not, for scream and yell, everybody go out and buy my book, but to say, if you're interested in what was going on, if you're interested in the truth, then I've written it down in this book. And if you want the nitty-gritty details, the book has it in it. Buy the book, don't buy the book, I really don't care. I don't make hardly any money off the book. I mean, it's self-published, and Amazon gets 90%, if not more of it. Do taxes, and when you see the cost of what they make and what they sent you, oh goodness. Let's just put it this way, they made a good piece of money off of me. And I barely got enough gas, money to put gas in the truck and get to where I'm going. So anyway, but basically J.C. Johnson had an organization, has an organization, or had. I guess now that he's passed, it's gone on to Jack. But the site is Phantoms and Monsters, and J.C. had made a post in that website about how they were involved in the study with. It was a mainline study Dr. Meldrum was involved in, that Dr. Brian Sykes was involved in, and that they actually had they had a grade A sample. Literally, they had a witness startle a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and the creature took off running and wasn't paying attention and ran through a cedar tree, cut itself, mangled the tree, left blood, hair, flesh samples. So JC went and got literally went and got a scientist from a local university, and they Dr. Christopher was his name, and he went and interviewed the witnesses, and he collected the samples, and those samples were sent to this study that was going on in 2015-ish, 16-ish. And, they even made the announcement, that basically the preliminary results showed that, the preliminary results showed that the DNA that they had collected confirmed the Sasquatch Genome Study's results. They went on in October 2017. I actually listened to a broadcast that was from the previous spring in April 2017 with Jack Carey, and he was on Fade to Black, and he was talking about this study and how it confirmed Dr. Ketchum's study. He basically said, and this is a quote, the findings of this study were exactly the same as the Sasquatch Genome Project. So, so there we had a study, preliminary results came back, they told the guys about it, and it confirmed the study. Well, things went quiet. I started looking around saying, oh, this is great, but I couldn't find any other mentions of it, I couldn't find anything else. And I was able, this is why JC was still alive, I was able to, and it wasn't long, I had this conversation with him before he passed, but he I got hold of him on Facebook Messenger, and I sent him. I said, and I've got it in my book, and I'll just read it to you. I said, "Hi there, long time no talk. Hope you're doing good. Jack Carey mentions you guys sent Bigfoot hair, blood, etc. to a second genome study that confirms the DNA Sasquatch study that Melba did. Is that true?" JC came back and said, "That's where it gets sticky. And unfortunately, the samples are across the pond with socks. That's probably the last we'll hear of it." So I was like, that's weird. And I said, and then I messaged him back, did they ever give you results? JC Johnson said some, but he didn't elaborate. So now I'm like, well, JC, I know JC, he would not said some, he would have said some and then really got into the nitty gritty of what was going on. But he didn't, so I knew something was up. And then I said, "Do you have any lab results or reports you could share with me? I am working on a book about the DNA study. It would be great to have more collaborating evidence." And then JC said the following: "Guarantee you Scientifica is not going to release anything outside of their agenda. Bunches of folks have samples that ended up with socks. I have nothing else I can say." So basically he was under an NDA that the Scientifica is the organization that was doing the study or had control of the study, and they pretty much buried it because it would confirm the Sasquatch DNA results. So saying that goes back to the original question, what do you think about these scientists that have done this sample from this other TV show, and it comes back possibly has some ape in it, or it possibly shows that they're ape. Well, of course it shows they're ape. That's the whole agenda of these people, okay? Their whole agenda has been it's a bipedal ape, and they've been pushing it and banging on it and fighting anybody else that says it's anything else. So of course it does, and I don't trust them as far as I could throw an elephant. So I guess bottom line is, based on what I told you, I trust this DNA study, I trust those results, I trust the scientists and the other results when other labs would test and then clam up because their results confirmed Dr. Ketchum's results. Just like this study that JC Johnson talked about. And that dog's going to bark the entire time I try to do this video. I'm going to have to shut every window in the house to keep it from coming in. But anyway, so that answers that question. And there's several other questions. Try to go through them and not make this a 5-hour long video of me sitting in my den or in my dining room with the dog barking in the background. So I'll shut the window so we'll see what happens. He'll still bark, but maybe it won't be so bad. So another thing that it's a current thing that keeps coming up, and it's people want proof. People want to see pictures. People think, and I understand that, hey, that will validate their experience. I get it. I understand that. That's why I got into this mess anyway, was validation of encounters I've had. But the bottom line is, it's time to move past that. The study's been done, multiple studies have been done. There's pictures all over the place. I've got them, and if you ask me for them, I'll send them to you. I mean, I don't hide them. I don't charge for them. They're all over my website. Naysayers and non-believers and people who just can't handle the truth will say, "Oh, this bird, oh, that's a shadow. Oh, that's not one." I had one guy argue with me one time, it was a long time ago, and he said, "That's not Sasquatch, that's not what they look like." And I responded, I said, "Well, what do they look like?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I've never seen one, but I know that isn't it." And I'm thinking, what stupid logic is that? You don't know what you're talking about, idiot. You know, people have in their mind what, based on, you know, social media, TV shows, what they're supposed to look like. And if they don't look like what, they've read about or been told, and when they see an actual picture of one, and they're like, well, that's not one, that has to be pareidolia. Oh, that's not one, that has to be something else. You don't know that. Basically, the pictures I've got is what they look like. It's what they look like. I can't help it. Some have upturned noses, others have flat noses, others have skinny noses. Some are white, some are black, some are gray, some are blue. I'm just, I report, you decide. It's still a phrase from a news company, but it is what it is, and I'm presenting you with the truth. I'm presenting you with what I got, raw, uncensored, take it or leave it. And so I think people got to get their head around they're real. And we don't, the time for proving is over. We need to move past that to the next step, that they're real. And the next step is, once you acknowledge they're real, is understanding what they are. And I've done other videos just like this, but I keep getting emails. So, I keep getting the questions. I keep getting, people having habituation situations that they mean well, and they're trying to cope with it, but they don't get that we're dealing with people. I guess that's the bottom line. Yes, they're a human hybrid, and yes, depending on their genetics and how pure their genetics are, some have more abilities than others. But the bottom line is they are part human. They do have intellect, will, emotions. They have a culture. They have a language. We don't understand it. We don't understand their culture. We don't understand their morals and how that all functions. Now, there are some Native American tribes and some, small percentage of people who have enough contact with them that they know more than the average person does. But the bottom line is they won't talk to us. We don't have any interaction with them other than the sightings and what's been what you've seen on Steve's channel and other channels talking about the encounters. So while using common sense and experience, we can determine some things. We're really just at the minute stage of understanding anything that's going on with these people. We just don't. And I don't see it ever changing much, because unless there's full disclosure, and even then I don't think, even if it was admitted to that they exist by the federal government, whatever you want organization to say, hey, they exist, it still doesn't change the fact that they don't interact with us, and they have a certain set of standards and rules that they go by that make them isolationist and want to stay away from us for the most part. And if they interact with us, it's in a very subscribed manner almost all the time. There's always exceptions, but the longer you've looked into this and studied this, you understand that there's a set of rules, or it's like the movie, it's like the pirate code. It's a set of suggestions. But for the most part, they follow those rules. It's not always adhered to. There are rogues, there's exceptions, but in general, they follow a certain set of guidelines and rules when it comes to interaction with human beings, and that's what they do. So, I'm gonna take a sip of iced tea. So, what we're dealing with are a people. They're not wild animals. They don't go on instinct alone. When you encounter one, you don't know what's going on in its life. You don't know whether there's conflict with other Sasquatch. You don't know whether it's happy, it's sad, just lost a baby, it's hungry. They're on there's a group of them on a move, and you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they just got to get you out of the way. You don't know. You don't know the situation. And so you got to understand that and be aware of that. I've said it before, dealing with the Sasquatch is like how settlers had to deal with the indigenous Indians when they got here. Some tribes were cooperative and friendly. Some tribes just were neutral and didn't want to have anything, weren't violent or, didn't want to do anybody harm, but they just want to be left alone, and they left, people alone. And then there were the ones that were quite violent, that viewed us as invaders, and, it was, we were, kill as many as you can. And why in the Sasquatch clans and community, whatever you want to call it, that's not, the majority of them. There are those out there, and that's why you have to be on guard. So there's no easy answers to the, I get questions, there's no easy answers. I'm not an expert. Look, I'm not an expert at all. I'm not an habituator. What that is, that's a person who has them coming around their home place and they're friendly, and there's actually some interaction. There are a few, it's not, I don't know how many, I don't think it's a large amount, but there are some people that have relationships with these things, these Sasquatch. They give them food, they communicate with them, and they have, a little bit better understanding, of what they are and their structure, community structure, etc. So, said all that to say this: I'm dealing with some people and doing everything we can to help them. But I think what these people that are writing me don't understand, these are people who live in rural areas that have them harassing them, killing their livestock, watching the children as they play. I think the part of the missing piece is we got to understand that they're a people, that they're just not an animal, and they're doing, it's more than just instinct. Okay, they're not, just mindlessly doing things. There is a reason they're doing them, and dealing with them in that situation is a little bit different than dealing with them if they followed you home after you've gone out. See, there's situation I was in. I live in a small town. I have my house, it's my property. I went and I aggressively sought them out and wanted an encounter, desired an encounter. That gave them permission to do the same. In other words, I went to find them and follow them. They said, that in the rule book, that means they can do the same. They can seek me out, and they can come. That gives them permission to come to where I live. Now, when it got to be too much, and when I realized what I was dealing with, and that these were spiritual and physical beings, and what they actually were, which I'll explain in my book, The Nephilim Among Us. I'm not going to get into it, but I believe that there's a spiritual component to these creatures, and so I was able to use biblical principles and faith warfare principles to keep them from coming on my property, because it's my property and they were coming to my property. And so because it belonged to me and I had dominion over it, I was able, using biblical principles, to do what's called rebuking, where you call upon the name of Jesus and his strength and power to protect you from them. And since they're a spiritual being, they had to honor that. Now, I found out that means 300 feet. They don't come on my property, but they'll do stuff on the outskirts of my property. And when I'm in the woods, they'll follow me or they'll do stuff. They still interact, but they stay, it seems like the bubble of protection somewhere around 300 feet, 100 yards. So that's one circumstance. Now there's a second circumstance where people own a farm, own a ranch, or own property or buy property in a rural area. And they're moving into, or their land, 300 acres, 50 acres, 5 acres, 10,000 acres. The Sasquatch were on the land and have been on that land for 500, 600, 800,000 years. So they're established. This is their territory. This is their dominion, not yours. Now, yes, you have a farm on there, and your grandfather or your great grandfather bought this farm, in 1875, and I understand the principle of ownership. This is my farm, but you got to understand you weren't there first, and that is an important rule. That is an important concept to remember when we're dealing with spiritual rules. Spiritual warfare is dominion. And so there's one particular person, but some people say sometimes this rebuking thing, it doesn't work. Or, it kind of works. They won't come up the house, but they still are on the property. I own 300 acres, and why they won't come up to the farmhouse anymore and look through the windows, they seem to stay out of my yard. They're still on my property. Why didn't they leave my property? And, and like I said, I'm no expert, but through study of biblical principles and what I've been looking at, the reason is, that's their land. They had dominion over it. They were there first. You can't go into their land and then rebuke them off of it. This is not, biblical times where we're told to go in and possess the land, and God's going to give it, we're to wipe out all the Nephilim tribes and, subdue the land and take it. This is not that side of the situation. We have not been given a mandate from God to go in, to Wyoming and run all the Sasquatch out and take dominion of their, of all the wilderness. We haven't. We've got to deal with these beings, and we've got to understand what we're dealing with, and we also got to understand the circumstances, that we're in here. So what I'm saying to people who have these situations is it may be time to actually talk to the Sasquatch. And you say, well, Scott, you've lost your mind. How do you talk to him? You talk to them. You literally go to the areas where they're at, whether it's where they frequent, and you may have to do it 2 or 3 times. And usually, if you're as soon as you leave, like let's say you own a 300-acre farm, as soon as you leave your farmhouse and you hit the countryside, they pick you up and somebody's following you. One of them's following you. Somebody knows you're there. I mean, they're that cognizant and they're that aware of who's in their area. So you go out like that with an intention, and I think they'll follow you. And my recommendation is you talk to them in English, in a calm, assertive, confident way, and you try to reason with them and say, look, this, whatever you're doing needs to stop. You've got to stop killing my chickens. You've got to stop stealing, my horse feed. You've got to stop tearing the barn door down to get into the feed. Let's come to a agreement. Let's come to an understanding. This is my farm and that's my property, and I don't want you to come on it. But I do understand that long before I was around, this is your territory, and try to come to an agreement. See if it works. All it could do is not work. But I think that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that we're missing. That we're just trying to run roughshod, and we're not understanding that we're not just dealing, with, they're 8, 9, 12 foot, some are 14 foot tall or taller, 1,000 pounds. Many of them have no respect and no love, love for us at all. In other words, we disgust them. They think they're better than us, and that's goes back to the spiritual side of it. But still, you got to understand. Some of them view us that way. So, sometimes you've got to be strong, but you don't need to be aggressive toward them, because shooting at them and all these other things sometimes can do the exact opposite of what you think it's going to do. And I understand that sometimes we want to protect our families, and I get that, and you have every right to do that. And if they get aggressive and try to come at you or your family, you got to do what you got to do. But popping off a shot at one that's walking through a field 100 yards away, it's not bothering anybody. That's not a good idea. Or there's probably a reason they're trying to take this stuff. It's probably because they want food and hungry. Now, they're just like people. Some of them are just mean, and they're trying to send a message. And I have seen cases where they'll just kill livestock and not eat it, not take anything from it, just kill it out of spite because they don't like you, and they're trying to send you a message. But then other times they're hungry, and you've got chickens, and they're 800 pounds, and you got chickens, and they're going to take them. And if you read the history of how the Native Americans dealt with them, I mean, they had the same issues with them in some respects. They did trade with them, and they did have like a tribe to tribe relationship with them. But there was always, it seemed to me like it was always uneasy, because Sasquatch always leaned towards the side of mischief, and there was always those that they couldn't control in their clans, those that would take squaws and those that would, kill indiscriminately. So, but for the most part, they attempted, peace first, and then, because you're not going to win in a war with these things, you're just not. But I think that through some common sense and trying to understand what you're dealing with, that you may be able to live amongst or alongside these beings without them destroying your property and scaring you to death and doing things that you feel like endanger your family. And I think that's the next route to try for those who are having these sort of situations. And hope that helps you. I'm no expert, and it may not work at all, but based on my experience and studying the Bible and because of what these things are, Nephilim, and so you look at like types, and in the Bible, God's people dealt with them. There were times Nephilim owned property. And in the Bible, there's a situation where, they had to purchase land for a grave site, from a Nephilim. And so, the fact that they owned property, the fact that they had dominion over that property was respected, and the land was purchased. You see what I'm saying? And that's where I'm getting this principle from. There were the linemen of David, and when you look at this, it was describing their physical attributes. These were, genetically manipulated beings that had lion heads, were very strong and fast, and were bred for battle. And they made a decision and changed sides, so to speak, and fought for King David. And so it's more complicated than you think, and there's more. There's a dynamic out there. So that's where this is coming from. The more I study and look at this stuff, I'm thinking, well, how were these things handled biblically? There were times, of course, when they were on land, the promised land that was not of their dominion, God told the children of Israel to drive them out, and He gave them the ability to do that. But when you look at other situations where the Nephilim owned property or had a dominion or a legitimate claim to an area, they were dealt with differently. It wasn't the same. Their rights as a landowner were respected, and a purchase was made, and a transaction. So, that's why I've come to this conclusion that we've got to look at these things, especially in these situations where people are being harassed, where they're coming onto your property. I still would rebuke around my property as far as where my house is, and I think that will keep them away from your home. But the greater property, I used to say go to the four corners, but I don't. This is just my opinion, and this, things could change with more evidence. I think that's where we have the issue, is because these creatures already had dominion over that land, and they were there first, and for whatever the reason they have, that's their property, so to speak, and you can't just drive them off of it by rebuking them. If that's the take I'm getting now, is that that's where you've got now them raiding your property, coming on and doing that. That's where like I said, that's where and you can use some practical things. We've talked about this before. The motion sensor lights, the game trail cameras, the Christmas or laser lights are very effective. And some people claim, well, they just disable this, or they beat that, or they knock them out. I can understand that. If that happens and you've got a really aggressive bunch, and I'd keep at it. I'd keep replacing them, but that's where the talking to them, trying to reason, say, look, when times get tough and there's not wild game plentiful, it's okay to take a chicken or two. It's okay to do whatever, because chickens, you can buy them a dime a dozen. Get extra chickens, but don't be killing my livestock just for fun or for spite or for send me some sort of message. I've got to have that to eat. If you want me here on this property providing you with these things, then you're going to have to we're going to have to come to an arrangement. So I hope that makes sense. I know it's a deep dive. I know this is probably, for some people, this is way out there and the kook's lost it. But for those people who are dealing with this, and it's real, and trust me, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that deal with situations similar, and no one's helping them, no one's addressing it, and they're left on their own. And so, me and Steve and Dave and several others are trying our best, through our experiences, to help these people, and to be there for them, to listen to them, and to give them constructive ideals that might help. So, addressed a couple things. I need to get on the move. I've got a birthday party to attend. I'll try to get this uploaded later tonight, but I hope that helped you. Again, I've got the Sasquatch Awareness Project, and on there I've got information, pictures, my email address. If I can help you, please write. We'll do what we can. Steve's got his website, Dave's got his website, and all those links will be in there. They're there for you. If you just need to tell someone, or if you're having issues, like I said, I'm no expert, and but I'll do my best. And and I'm always learning. I've got an open mind. I have my certain sets of what I think and opinions based on the facts and the information I have, but I'm always open-minded to say, when new information and facts come in, definitely going to reevaluate and rethink it, because till the day we die, we're always going to be getting new information, learning new things, and no one knows it all, and no one's an expert. So for those of you that are having these issues, we're praying for you, thinking about you. Hoping we can get something worked out where you can live in peace, and you don't have to live in fear, and that you can live a happy and productive life without these things being a constant source of worry. God bless you, and we'll talk to you later.